I'm not sure if we should be hearing something, but we can't hear anything on Zoom.
We might have been muted. You hear now?
Yes, we can hear now.
Oh, good. Welcome, everyone, and let's get the show on the road. So first, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do, sir.
We have a quorum. So welcome and introduction. So why don't we start? Austin, yeah, we start with you and then walk around the table and everyone introduce you quickly. And then you also state if you are the voting delegate. You have to turn on the mic on the top there.
How about now? Yeah. Jesse Zwick, council member, City of Santa Monica, alternate, but I'll be filling in today for the voting member, De La Torre.
Okay.
Lauren Langer, counsel for the COG. Winnie Fong with the West Side Cities COG.
Pull the thing up.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
On the top, you push it up
Yeah,
towards you.
it's on.
Okay. Cecilia Stelano, Executive Director, West Side Cities Council of Government.
Göran Eriksson, council member, Cover City, and West Side COG chair.
Lester Friedman, City of Beverly Hills, alternate.
Julian Gold, Mayor, Beverly Hills, and I'm the voting member.
Seppi Shine, Mayor for the City of West Hollywood, and I'm the voting member.
Lauren Meister, council member, City of West Hollywood. I'm not a voting member.
Chelsea Byers, council member, City of West Hollywood. I'm a guest. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, there are also some people on the
Yeah,
line.
exactly. I was going to ask that. So, Winnie, who do we have online? Let's see. Screen looks for. So we start with Dan O'Brien and Riley O'Brien.
Yeah, Dan O'Brien here, Vice Mayor, Culver City, alternate member.
Hi, everyone. Riley O'Brien, analyst with the COG, attending remotely because I am a bit under the weather.
Okay, Sarah Dominguez.
Hello, Sarah Dominguez from SCAG here to speak to you about our regional plan.
Gabriela Yap.
Hi, Gabriela Yap, Senior Policy Management Administrator for Beverly Hills.
And Cindy.
You're
You're
on mute.
muted.
There we go.
Cindy Owens, Beverly Hills, Municipal Affairs Program Manager.
Thank you. Larissa.
Hi, Larissa Hogan, City of Culver City Transportation Planner.
And I think from what I can see, Lauren also came online here.
Hi, I'm Lauren Wren from Culver City Advanced Planning.
Thank you, everyone. I don't see any more online, so that's the whole motley crew. That moves us over to item number 3. It's a presentation by Sarah Dominguez from SCAG. So we have it up online, so go ahead, Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me time on your agenda this morning. Like I said, I'm Sarah Dominguez and I'm the planning supervisor at SCAG for Connect SoCal Development, which Connect SoCal is our name for the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. In November of this year, SCAG's Regional Council released the draft plan for public review and comment. So I'd like to share a couple of details about the plan and invite your review during our comment period. So I'll skip over the intro about SCAG so that I can focus on what the plan can mean for you and your jurisdictions. So as a primer, Connect SoCal is one of the primary documents that SCAG is responsible for preparing. And in developing this Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy, or RTPSCS, you may have heard it referred to as, we must meet a number of federal and state requirements, and failure to do so would jeopardize federal and state transportation funding to the region. This plan includes $750 billion in transportation investments by 2050, along with policies and strategies to enable us to comply with these requirements. Then, once the plan is completed, meaning that our regional council has adopted it and it's approved by our state and federal regulators, that's when consistency with this regional plan can become a threshold for local jurisdictions in seeking many funding grant sources. So I'll probably reiterate this again, but I want to be clear that this plan, especially when I'm talking about the land use, it does not supersede any local land use authority. I'm speaking about consistency for competitive grant sources. So specifically, applications to the state Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program, Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, and other SB1 competitive programs all require that the projects include or be consistent with the region's adopted SCS. So I'll point out the elements in the plan that can relate to that. And again, in inviting your review, you can see details on all of these plan elements, specifically in Chapter 3 of the draft plan. So I would invite you to look there for more details on this. So for this plan, something that's new is that we created these regional planning policies as a new element of the cycle so that jurisdictions could more easily point to one place in the plan to show how they're demonstrating consistency, to make it easier to be competitive for these funds. Then next we have the project list, which mostly consists of projects and programs submitted to us by the county transportation commissions. And then the third element that I want to highlight regarding this consistency is the forecasted regional development pattern. And I want to thank you. All of the members of the Westside Cities COG did participate in our local data exchange program and submit socioeconomic data to us, meaning jobs and housing forecasted growth. And so we do reflect this input as received in our draft plan. I was also asked to mention what this plan means in terms of RENA, which does relate most directly to this regional development pattern. So I want to point out that Connect SoCal does include the six cycle housing needs production projection at a regional level by the horizon of the plan. And to the extent that housing elements were completed at the time that we were collecting local data in December 2022, that's also collected in the plan. However, it's important to point out that Connect SoCal is not a RENA or general plan build out scenario. And specifically, there's a difference between these two planning processes pertaining to the requirements for Connect SoCal as a regional transportation plan and our federal transportation planning and Clean Air Act requirements, which essentially require us to include technically reasonable forecast of future population, households, and employment in order to project accurate future travel and our air pollutants. So there are some variances in how data shows up, especially on a finer scale within the plan and within the RENA allocation, but our plan does include the ability to accommodate all of the full 6-cycle RENA by the horizon of the plan. And then those last 2 points on these elements are relate more to SCAG's work or regional strategic investments, and then implementation strategies, which are actions for SCAG that's also new for this cycle. And it's where we intend to focus our attention for helping local jurisdictions and supporting plan implementation. So next, just quickly, just want to highlight that we follow a 3 C's planning approach, meaning our cycle for developing plan is pretty continuous. It's 4 years, and we update the plan every 4 years. And it's very cooperative with both the public through a number of working groups and outreach activities, but also with the county transportation commissions and local jurisdictions. So again, thank you for your jurisdiction's participation in the local data exchange process. In terms of who we're planning for, one of the foundational steps for long-range planning is understanding who we're planning for, which requires us to understand the regional demographic forecast. So I won't go into details of numbers here, but do want to point out that we're anticipating about half as much growth in terms of population as we did for our last regional plan in 2020. And this is in line with recent population decline and foreseeable slower growth in the future. But we still have fairly higher household growth, and this is due to supportive state and local policies. So as a snapshot, what you're seeing here is the policy priorities in the plan. This is how you'll see the regional planning policies that I mentioned organized. And we used equity and resilience as a lens throughout these 4 main pillars of the plan. We include a couple of new focus areas in this plan, or policy areas, such as housing the region. We have a specific technical report on housing this cycle, and also other economic policy areas like workforce development and broadband are new for this cycle. So in terms of what will the region look like in 2050, again, we're forecasting to add about 2 million people. We anticipate to see that development is more efficient than in our historical trends. We're anticipating to see less congestion and meeting our regional greenhouse gas emission reduction target, and to see some economic benefits as well, with about $2 in benefits for every dollar we invest, which contributes to overall increased competitiveness, and the direct investments in transportation investments will lead to almost 500,000 in new jobs annually. So in terms of what comes next, like I mentioned, we're in the middle of the public comment process. So we've been conducting briefings to elected officials. We held about 3 public hearings last week, and we're accepting public comments through January 12th. And then we'll be seeking to take the final plan to our regional council for adoption in April 2024. So I'd like to invite you all and or your staff to provide comments. You can do so in several ways. And we also have local staff in every county, so you can reach out to myself or Eric Rodriguez, or submit comments online through January 12th. And I hope I didn't rush through it, but if there's time, I can take questions. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to open up for some questions. So, colleagues, any questions for Sarah?
I do.
Okay.
City of West Hollywood. Under the budgeting, operations and maintenance was about over 60%. Can you detail that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, that's correct. It's 60% of the plan. So of the 750 billion, 60% is for operations and maintenance. And I'm so sorry, let me try to see if I can pull it up real quick. In terms of detailing, were you curious in terms of the operation and maintenance? That includes both transit, local street and roads, and highways. But I try to pull it up real quick for you here. Was there any specific question as to the breakdown of the operations and maintenance?
Yeah, I wanted to know what the breakdown was.
I got it in front of me now. 33% O&M for transit, 12% is for regional significant local streets and roads, 10% for highways, and 6% for passenger rail.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any thoughts? I just want to make a comment. I appreciate that you have lowered the expected growth because I know that on the west side, I don't think we even have grown. I think we actually have lost residents over the last 2 years when I look at the most current data. So I for one appreciate that we are adjusting what we can expect. Any final thought, anyone? Well, thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate this. And I'm sure you will get some comments in your comment period from us. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That moves us over to item number 4. And the first one is we have our meeting notes. I think staff has some corrections there.
Hello. We did notice a discrepancy in the meeting notes from October 12th. This is regarding the attendance list. The COG officers, the current vice chair is actually the city of Santa Monica, and the secretary is the city of West Hollywood. So we would like to make those amendments.
Okay, any further comments? Suggestions? Okay, so we have a suggestion from staff to correct the minutes notes. Can I get a motion to approve with that correction? I have a motion from Beverly Hills, second. Anyone?
I'll second it too.
Okay, I second it. So we have a motion and a second. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. Okay, notes approved with a correction. Sorry? Yeah, we have 4. Well,
Yeah,
he's
because we have.
Santa Monica was out in the, very,
Oh, man, I missed it.
yeah,
Voted for you.
yeah,
Favor of the minutes?
exactly,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's corrected.
yeah.
As corrected.
Then
Thank
we
you.
also have our meeting schedule, and the suggestion is that we continue as we have had prior years. So we meet the second Thursday of even number months. So the next meeting would be February. And also that we will continue to hold our meeting in a hybrid format for 2024. Any comments or thoughts? Otherwise, we actually need to have a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? We have a schedule. Thank you. So that moves us over to the C, which is the AB 761, which we touched on briefly in an earlier meeting. So I don't know if staff wants to say something about this or.
Yeah, I mean, this is a follow-up from a previous discussion we had at the request of the city of West Hollywood. And I think if Hernan Molina wants to just provide a quick overview to remind folks.
Yeah. So thank you again. I'm Hernan Molina. I'm the Governmental Affairs Liaison for the City of West Hollywood. The bill has been amended. It's in the Senate currently pending to be assigned to Policy Committee, which will be picked up when the session starts on January 4th. As we explained before, this bill expands the lifetime of an IEFD to 75 years. It will make easier to any entity who would like to finance, because obviously the longer the term, the lower the payment. And it applies to Los Angeles County and to projects that are involving Metro Rail. So it's very specific. And we hope that the COG supports us. He has supported this alignment officially. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have speakers from the floor or no? We have a public comment. Okay. Anyone else around the table that has thoughts on this? Otherwise, we go to public comment.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Burton. I live here in West Hollywood, and I just wanted to briefly thank the City of West Hollywood, along with support from the County Board of Supervisors. Lindsay Horvath is a longtime supporter of the northern extension of the Crenshaw line. And any of you came on Santa Monica Boulevard this afternoon sees that traffic, even on a quiet Thursday morning, never stops in this area, as true in much of the west side. So it will be important to develop creative financing to try and support Metro Rail projects and especially accelerate it so that we can see it before 2047. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I recall that we, as a COG, took $40 million off the top and allocated to the Crenshaw extension last year. So hopefully it will happen as soon as possible. Any further comments on this issue? Because there is a letter attached, so I can attend in a motion to approve the letter to be sent off.
Motion.
I have a motion. And I have a second. Second. Okay, we have several seconds. That's great. Like Beverly Hills second also. So any further comments, discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. So everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Okay, approved to send the letter as written. Thank you. That moves us further down the items here, and it's sort of the last action item of today, which is number D. And it's the regional action plan, the REAP, and also the sub-regional partnership program. This has been something we've been talked about earlier. I wonder if staff wants to give us a quick recap.
Thank you. So this will be a two-part action item for the REAP 2.0 Sub-Regional Partnership Program. SCAG is using a non-competitive formula allocation based on the proportional share of our arena numbers to allocate $330,000 to the COG. Earlier this year, we've discussed continuing exploratory work to create a regional housing trust, which staff recommended to use a portion of the funds to procure a consultant to help us establish formation and governance documents, equity considerations regarding RENA credits, program development and guidelines. And the deliverables will be an implementation plan and documents necessary for the COG member jurisdictions to consider potential adoption in forming a JPA around a regional housing trust. We also recommend using the other portion of the funds for on-call technical assistance to help your member jurisdictions to implement the housing elements. So the deadline to complete all of this work is actually December 31st of 2025. And we want to move this process along in order to stay on schedule. Since the board won't be convening until February, we recommend that the board authorize that we allow our legal counsel to review and execute the MOU between SCAG and the COG to receive the funding, as well as allow our staff to work closely with the housing working group to finalize the scope of work, which we've attached an outline of it. To develop the scope for the RFP that SCAG will release to the bench of consultants. We hope that we can do all of this within the first quarter and start the work immediately. Are there any questions from the board?
Anyone? Question? Thoughts?
Motion
Okay,
to
so we
approve.
basically have two decisions to make, if I understand
Right.
this correctly. The first is to allow our legal counsel to review and execute MOU with the SCAG or between SCAG and Westside COG. That will be the first one. So anyone wants to make that motion?
Motion.
We have a motion and a second. Second. For discussion. Okay, let's vote. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. The next time was to authorize the COG staff to work with our housing working group to develop the scope of work for the RFP that SCAG will release later. So that's the second motion. Was that clear? Or okay, yeah.
Motion
So-
to approve.
Sorry.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second. We have a second from Dr. Monica.
I
Thank
just,
you.
before we vote on it, I just
Yeah.
have a question.
Question.
Once the RFP is released, are we completely out of the process?
Once we release the RFP, we'll receive the proposals, which will have the housing working group review and provide a recommendation. We will actually need to come back to the board to finalize and consider who we want to procure as a consultant. So there will be a next step after that.
Oh, okay. And in the definition of that, the cost of the consultant is not the primary concern. Yeah, I mean, it could be a concern, but in the decision-making process, that comes back to us. Who and how do we weight the metric, the factors that are important to us as we make that decision? That could be the housing group. Who does that? It might be worthwhile once you decide that. I have no problem with them doing the foundational work for that. But it might be worthwhile to bring back to the board whatever that priority list is and how it's weighted in the determination of who the consultant will be. I just think it gives us a little more control and perhaps some insight into how it's going to.
So the rubric, essentially the rubric. So there's cost, there's the quality of the proposal, there's the approach.
They worked for before,
Yeah.
what have been their major successes?
Okay.
You know, all the stuff that you'd expect to be in there. Have they landed up on one side or the other of the political divide around this, what's been
Yeah.
their politics around it. I think that's going to be important to know, because ultimately that'll affect the outcome of this proposal. So I just, as you develop that, would like to see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm fine with that.
No, that,
And I would support that suggestion that becomes part of the process of this.
so we could come back in the February meeting with essentially the proposed evaluation criteria and the outline of the RFP.
If you can get it done by then.
And we'll try. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay, so that means that the motion would be that we ask the housing working group and staff to develop a scope for the RFP, but brings back the Rubicon for the valuation and the point system, how to select consultants to us by our February meeting. And
I'm fine with that.
that's okay. Okay. So that's a motion. Anyone second that?
I had made the original motion.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
so
So you want to amend your motion?
Yes, I will amend the motion to add
Yeah.
the amendment and go ahead.
So do we have a second from Beverly Hills? Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Let's vote. Everyone in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Okay, motion carried. That moves us over to item 5, which is the Executive Director's Report. Cecilia?
Yes. So as we like to do, we know that you read, so we're not going to read it to you again. I just want to there's a couple of things we do want to highlight. We still are looking for candidates for the vaunted position of alternative representative to the Metro Technical Advisory Committee for Streets and Freeways. So
Nobody
just,
volunteered? Amazing.
no. When Councilmember Swick left the room, I thought maybe you would appoint him just because he had left the room. So again, if you have staff members, this is an opportunity. It's the alternate position, but it might be a good way for folks to gain some professional development experience. So just want to pass that along. It's still an open position.
I have a question there for the group. Culver City sits on the seat currently, one of our staff persons. So if we have a second person that are willing to do this, is that something that would be acceptable, or are we going to look for another city so we get some balance? Any thoughts?
I think having another city would be important.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this just staff or
It's staff.
it's staff? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll and it's a transportation and homelessness working group.
No, it's a Streets and Freeway Technical Advisory
you.
Committee. It's with Metro. Streets and
Freeway.
Freeway.
So it's more a
Technical.
traffic engineer.
Yeah.
You send it around again and we'll pass it past
Yeah, I
the
think
city
that'll-
managers, and let's see who they'd like to
Thank
assign
you.
to this.
Will do.
Maybe we have some internal candidates.
Okay, good.
Will do. Then we have some board appointments for the League of Cities. We want to just report on. We have Councilmember Phil Brock from Santa Monica, who's going to take over as our regional director in 2024 after Councilmember Erickson he steps down. What else we have? We do want to have a quick report from
Celia, would you
Yeah.
use the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So I noted that Councilmember Phil Brock is going to be taking over as the regional director for us. After Councilmember Erickson steps down at the end of December of 2023. So Councilmember Brock's term is going to begin on January 1st and it'll run through the end of the year. Okay. We also will have yet another Metro committee coming up. This is the West Side Central Service Council. Martha Eros has served on this for time immemorial. And her Metro wants the COG to submit a nomination to either have her continue or to have an additional person put on a replacement nominee. I think she is still interested, is my understanding. But we turn to the city of Beverly Hills and, if she's no longer interested, let us know right away. And then we will go ahead and circulate.
Assume she is until she isn't.
Okay. Okay. So that's yet another. And then we want to have, I think Riley wanted to go through some of the transportation updates. Am I correct? No? Okay. We're going to pass on that. So, yep. Then. Yeah. Okay. Winnie, did you want to talk about broadband coordinating committee?
Really briefly, wanted to call the attention to the county's forming an intergovernmental broadband coordinating committee because we're going to see federal grant opportunities coming down the pipeline. This is related to broadband infrastructure and digital equity. So they have been doing outreach to your cities. I think they reached almost all of our cities, but not all. We did meet with them, and did interviews. But if anyone has questions, want to share your ideas of what this committee could look like, and ideas about how we should allocate the funding, down from the county level, please let me know and I can connect your staff with our county contact.
How much money?
I'm not sure.
Little bit or a lot? How many comments?
I'll double check and get back to you.
And then lastly, on this is on the West Side COG boundary redesign. We wanted to take another look at it. Riley on our team, who's a GIS expert, has tried to update it to reflect the 2020 redistricting. Riley, are you available to quickly give an overview on the boundaries?
Yes, I would be happy to. Thank you, Cecilia. So just to set this up, I want to make very clear, we're not actually changing anything about the boundary. That's why this is not an action item. We're merely redesigning the boundary map. So the COG boundary is staying the same. Our 6 member jurisdictions are staying the same. It's just that City of LA and County of LA have had their own boundary changes, which doesn't affect our boundary directly, but it does affect, the underlying districts within the current West Side COG boundary. And so, again, not an action item, and we're not making changes. We're just redesigning the map to make it more clear and to make sure that all of the publicly available information that we have on our member jurisdictions is on our website and transparent and easy to access. So just to give a quick overview, so we'll be looking really at 6 maps. Our current boundary map as of 2013, which is the last time it was updated. Our redesigned boundary map that we will add to our website. Some of the changes from the last time that we walked through this. So those of you who were with us in 2021 will remember that in 2021, we walked through a similar process, but this was before the redistricting process for the city and county of LA was finalized. So we'll look at some changes from 2020 to 2023 through redistricting. Again, these are not changes to the COG boundary. They are changes to the city of LA and county of LA districts. And then we'll just show how the current COG boundary compares to other neighboring COG subregions. So without further ado, this is our current boundary map as reflected on the website for the COG. It was last updated over 10 years ago, October 2023. And while this does clearly show the 4 smaller member jurisdictions and it shows our boundary, it does not show which districts of the city of LA nor which unincorporated areas are shown in the subregion. It actually doesn't show the boundaries of the city of LA, so it's a little bit hard to see which areas are within city of LA versus unincorporated county of LA. And it's not showing any of those districts. So the redesign that we have put together, and we've run this by the Transportation Working Group as well as the city liaisons in our agenda briefing, looks like this. It is meant to be much more clear in terms of which member jurisdictions and also which council districts actually cross over the COG boundary. So you can see our current COG boundary as reflected in 2013 actually includes portions of 5 council districts and portions of 2 county supervisorial districts. And that's a change from 2020 when our boundaries actually included 1 fewer LA City Council district, but 1 additional county supervisor district. So just looking, removing, it's a lot of colors, of course, but removing some of them to focus specifically on the city of LA. we can see that back in 2020, before redistricting, our COG boundary included the entirety of Council District 11, a large portion of Council District 5, and much smaller Council District 10 and Council District 4. So now we have a pretty similar layout, but we have larger portion of Council District 5. We have about the same portion of Council District 10, and we have a somewhat smaller portion of Council District 4, and now a very tiny portion of Council District 13 within our COG boundary. Again, we're not changing the boundary, but just wanted to put that out there as information and be transparent about that process and about that overlap. And then similarly, looking at the County of LA, back in 2020, we actually shared portions of 3 county supervisor districts. Supervisorial districts 2, 3, and 4 crossed into the West Side Cities COG. Now we're actually split between 2 county supervisor districts. So essentially the north and northwestern portion of the COG is within Supervisorial District 3, and the more southeastern portion is within Supervisorial District 2. And then we also compared our current subregional boundary with neighboring subregions, and according to SCAG, the neighboring subregions do overlap slightly with our current COG boundaries. So you can see a slight overlap in the northwestern portion near the unincorporated community of Topanga Canyon with the Las Virgenes Malibu COG. And then in the southeastern portion, we can see a slight overlap with the city of Inglewood within the South Bay Cities COG. So we just want to make sure that we're clear about what our boundaries are, and that we are able to consider how they may impact funding sources. The last map that I'll show here is a map of the Metro subregional boundaries. So these are the LRTP subregional boundaries. That stands for Long Range Transportation Plan. But these are actually the same boundaries, and we confirm this with multiple sources. These are the same boundaries that are used for our MSP allocation. So our current boundary actually doesn't impact that allocation, because Metro, as you can see here, has their own boundary, which includes generally just less of the city of LA than our stated boundary on the website. But for other funding sources and other analyses, it's important to have a clear sense of the population of the COG, city of LA, county of LA. So this is just a way of clarifying those boundaries so we can do that analysis more accurately. And so again, we will be moving forward with this new redesigned map. We're not changing any boundaries, but we are just showing the boundaries in a different way and hopefully in a more clear way. So I will now pause for any questions.
Anyone has any question, need clarifications? Okay, thank you. We have no questions. We are just confused on a little higher level.
That concludes our executive director's report. We're planners. What can I say? We like maps.
We didn't get a choice of our color.
Dr. Gold, we could probably accommodate a choice. Okay.
Okay, with that, that moves us over to the item 6, transportation update.
All right. And again, we're going to bring Riley back on deck. This is important stuff. This is about the Measure M multi-year program cash flow and transportation priorities. Wendy's first going to go over the cash flow that we received, the projections for the next 5 years. It's very exciting. We have a good chunk of change to program. And then Riley's going to do a brief presentation. Go ahead, Winnie.
Just to set up the framework for Riley's presentation. So every October, we receive a 5-year updated cash flow from Metro on the MSP multi-sub-regional program. And it also includes funding available for the SEP program, sub-regional equity program. So as of now, and you'll see in Riley's presentation, we have $13 million available by fiscal year 2027. It's important to note that this is a big jump from previous years because according to the Measure M ordinance and their administrative procedures, the cost curve of how they allocate the revenues, it increases from 1% to 2%, starting 2028. So that's good for us. And the COG has 11 million of unspent funds. So that means we'll have a total of $24 million available to program under MSP and also STEP funding. So this presentation is really to guide the discussion with the board members of how we should prioritize our transportation priorities. With the Olympics coming, it's going to be proposed to be car free for the spectators. So we want to think about our transportation infrastructure. So Riley, you can share your screen and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Winnie, and thank you again, members of the board. So I'll just be starting with a quick overview of MSP and SEP, distinguishing between the two. And then I'll go back to basically our most recent board decisions for each of these funding sources, just to recap and I think remind folks where we last left off with each of these components. And then I want to just sort of show, following up on what Winnie said around the Olympics, those will be in 2028. Many venues on the west side, as well as the Olympic Village at UCLA. It will mean a huge number of spectators and others coming into the west side, and a lot of folks to accommodate with our transportation system. So I want to show what our metro rail system will look like then, and also what it will look like, in the following decades. But what I'd really like to hear some discussion on, and I think we'd like to get all of your thoughts and suggestions on next steps, is how we can sort of complement that rail network in 2028. And something we've looked at are BRT or bus infrastructure connections that could help kind of leverage those metro rail investments that are ongoing. So first, I want to just clarify that when we talk about MSP, which stands for the multi-year sub-regional program within Metro's Measure M funding source. So technically, SEP is a type of MSP, but when we talk about MSP, we're usually talking about the active transportation and first last mile connections program that we've been actually using funding from for the last several years. So when we went through the Measure M process back in 2015, 2016, the entirety of the Westside COG's multi-year sub-regional program that was kind of originally anticipated as the COG's funding source, that was allocated entirely to active transportation and first last mile projects. So essentially bicycle and pedestrian projects and some transit projects that can help provide connections to public transit, including rail infrastructure. So we've programmed over the past now 6 years, but really in the last 3 years since we had set up the Westside COG mobility study, we've programmed 29.4 million out of 40.4 million that has been made available between 2017 and 2027 through the cash flows that Winnie mentioned. And I'll show those in a moment, but just want to make clear that the MSP is what we've been bringing to you each year. It's where Fair and Peers has been our consultant really in charge of programming those funds based on the results and analysis of the Westside COG mobility study. That is a different funding source from the sub-regional equity program, which Metro sometimes calls a multi-year sub-regional program as well. But when we're talking about it, it's really a SEP as opposed to our active transportation MSP. So the SEP, this is the funding source that we had discussed earlier, has an allocation of 25% to the K line extension to Hollywood or Crenshaw line north extension, 62.5% to bus infrastructure, and then the remaining 12.5% allocated to the D line extension to Santa Monica. And so we've made those allocations over throughout 2021 and 2022, essentially put that dollar amount, which I should mention is $160 million that is expected to eventually be available to us. But we have not actually programmed any of those funds. So we actually haven't spent any of those funds or allocated the specific projects to specific expenditures in specific years. So that's why I mentioned here, we programmed 0 out of $5.4 million. And that's the amount that is available within the next 5 years through these cash flows. So it's only a small portion of the $160 million eventually available. So the last time the board discussed the MSP program was when we submitted our annual update in June 2023. So this is a list of the projects that we have either spent the money on or have plans to spend the money in a particular year from the MSP program. You can see that these are a lot of active transportation and first last mile, as that is the funding requirement. And they are relatively small and relatively focused on a single jurisdiction. Sometimes a couple of jurisdictions are benefit from them, but they're essentially allocated by single jurisdiction. On the other hand, the SEP allocation that we agreed upon almost exactly a year ago, this was meant to really fund larger sub-regional projects that benefit multiple sub-regions. So that's the $40 million to the Crenshaw North, $100 million or more to bus infrastructure, and $20 million or less to the D line to Santa Monica. And so Metro released these cash flows in the end of October, and they show basically the unallocated balance that we have, as well as the latest cash flow that we have coming through fiscal year 2027 and 2028. So basically we have over $11 million that we haven't used for MSP. And then we have almost $14 million coming in fiscal year 2027, 2028. And that's actually around the amount we'll be getting each year following that year, because essentially the MSP allocation to the first last mile active transportation program, it actually increases pretty significantly starting in 2027. So we're going to get more money for active transportation and first last mile. We're probably not going to get more sub-regional equity program funding until 2043. We don't know for sure, but the roughly $6.7 million that's listed here, this was really due to the federal bipartisan infrastructure law. So we can't really rely on too much more coming out of that account until 2043, when we're expected to start getting a much larger amount. So that's basically where the funding landscape is at, and we want to understand how we can use this $6.7 million. So just looking at our transportation system now, this Metro Rail system looks like today. We have the E line, formerly known as the Expo line, to Santa Monica, that's been really serving us well, very popular. We have the brand new K line extension, which is not quite to LAX, but will be to LAX hopefully next year. And then we have the Purple line extension, which is, of course, under construction and very visible throughout our subregion, but of course not in operation yet. In 2028, when the Olympics are here, this is what our rail system will look like. We'll have that Purple line extension completed, hopefully completed, to Westwood, to the VA hospital. We'll have the K line or Crenshaw line to LAX. We won't have any other rail. So, we're hoping that we can get some rail built sooner than, what it's scheduled for in Measure M. But if we look ahead to 2040, hopefully by 2040, we'll have the Crenshaw North extension or the K line North extension. Hopefully we'll have the Sepulveda transit corridor through or across the Santa Monica Mountains. But realistically, we're not going to have these north-south connections by 2028, nor will we have what will a connection from Westwood to LAX as we may have in 2060 potentially. So again, we're dealing with this work. This is what we will have in 2028. So 2 really great connections east to west between downtown LA and the west side. We'll have that rail line LAX, but not going really into the core of the west side jurisdictions. So what the subregional equity program, sort of the allocation, has given us this opportunity to do is start building some BRT or bus lane corridors to connect between these rail lines. And so these are the corridors in Metro's unfunded strategic project list that we developed for them a couple years ago. And I isolated the north-south corridors just because those are really where, we have these great east-west connections, and we'll have some really strong east-west connections in 2028, hopefully. But what we really don't have are these north-south connections. So we can see, just going from east to west, La Brea Avenue, La Cienega Boulevard, Jefferson Boulevard, Sepulveda Boulevard, and Lincoln Boulevard are the corridors that we've identified in the past. So as far as next steps, we'd like to hear from you all, have a pretty unstructured discussion of what we could use these funding sources on. We'll discuss these in more detail in January with the COG Transportation Working Group. And then in February or April, potentially we could have an action item that may, move some of this funding forward and program some of it. So I will pause there and hand it back over to Winnie and Cecilia.
So this is, sorry, seem to be on. So the point of this presentation is say, there's more money coming down the pike. We have a bunch of unspent money. We've got the SEP funding coming up. It's not a ton, but it's enough to actually maybe advance one of these BRTs. And as Riley went through, you got to wait till 2060 before we really see any major improvements on north-south. And those of us who live here know how bad that north-south connection is. So this is to try to stimulate some thought, showing the different types of bus corridors, BRT corridors that we might consider, much in the same way that West Hollywood's done a really excellent job trying to champion the northern extension and really has advanced that project. This might be an opportunity for the COG as a region, sub-region, to think about, do we want to try to advance one of these other corridors in a BRT, which is a lot cheaper, and maybe we could use some of our funds to get Metro to accelerate. That's the point of this.
No additional comment, but there's a public comment from in the room.
Okay, well, let's hear from the public comment, or do we have any comments on our web? No. Yeah. I think Councilmember O'Brien. So we will start with the public comment, and then Councilmember O'Brien after that. So please.
I don't think they do. Yeah.
Hello again, Kevin Burton in West Hollywood. I just want to very much thank the COG for its support of transportation in general in the plan, and especially active transportation in terms of first last mile connections. Again, support for the northern extension of the Crenshaw K line is very much appreciated and will be helpful. And let's not forget bus travel, because that's an important part of the solution of actually getting to the rail lines from and to the first last mile problem. And we've got to start on that in the COG and the dedicated bus lanes on La Brea Avenue between Sunset and Olympic here through West Hollywood, and those are working better all the time. And we hope the city of LA can work with Metro to extend that in phase 2 from Olympic Boulevard down to Coliseum, which are just at the very edge of COG's boundaries. Finally, in terms of first last mile connections, which an important part of which will be active transportation, but also includes buses and other wheeled entities. I just want to caution the COG and the member cities that you will have to work with Metro to ensure those plans are actually implemented, because we've had a problem around Union Station and the regional connector rail line where there's a big plan for active transportation and bike lanes and pedestrian improvements. Most of those were never installed, though the regional connector has opened and it's not clear if Metro intends to install them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, especially looking at the timeline for future rail, 2040, 2060, and, in Culver City, Councilmember Erickson and I had a meeting yesterday where he revealed that our traffic department is undergoing a pretty preliminary study, but it appears that in Culver City, 70% of cars that enter actually stay there. So presumably for, employees. And I've seen it in other jurisdictions, but I don't believe we have any kind of park and ride system anywhere in our COG. When we're looking at first mile, last mile, and all of us share borders with the 10 and the freeway and the 405, and presumably a lot of our city's employees come from maybe the Valley or from the Inland Empire. To reduce congestion in our jurisdictions, we could be sharing the cost and along with this money that is before us here to build park and ride structures. It would certainly have a much shorter timeline of build than rail or even a BRT. And I'm just kind of curious if that falls under a category where MSP funds can go, or SEP, but I know they're used in other cities, states across the country, not so much here in Southern California that I'm familiar with. Thanks.
Okay, do we have an answer regarding park and ride structures? If that
It wouldn't. It doesn't work.
No.
It's not working. And Riley, jump in if I get this wrong, but Councilmember O'Brien, really, yeah, you're correct to distinguish between the two programs. Our multi-year sub-regional program is for active transportation and first last mile, so it would not likely qualify for that purpose. But the SEP is extremely flexible. So if the COG decided it wanted to, we've allocated, or the COG has voted to allocate generally, a percentage for buses. So if you're thinking about that type of a shuttle situation, maybe that would work, but the SEP would be the source, and it might require some fine tuning of the COG's plan for how to spend that money. And Riley, you want to jump in? Did I pretty much get that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think the details as far as how we'll spend the funds on bus infrastructure, we still need to determine those. So, that's part of the purpose of this discussion. But it's correct that a park and ride setup would not fit into the existing MSP for first and last mile connections.
I have a question.
I would add, yes, we would have to speak with Metro, but it doesn't fall under the description of what we have. But for our MSP program, we did together agree to use the funding to fund active transportation first last mile. After 10 years of Measure M, we could amend what that program could look like, either expand it. So that's a consideration.
Can't believe it's been 10 years.
Yeah. Mayor.
Thank you.
Chang?
Deputy.
Yes. So I'm just trying to understand. There's a little vagueness, lack of clarity here. I'm looking over here. Is the discussion and is there a question posed as with regard to the north-south BRT corridors unfunded strategic project list about how the general funds with then discussion of how to allocate them potentially to these areas? Just want to understand what the ask is.
It's to pose that, that the SEP in particular, so that very flexible money. Do you have thoughts about it? We just throw this out there because analyzing the lack of really good north-south connections.
Right.
That might be one thing to consider because we're going to have that $7 million, $6.4 million coming.
I'm interested in getting some more information and definitely exploring these. The East-West didn't have any strategic project lists, unfunded ones. So I'm interested in knowing with regard to specifically La Brea and La Cienega, what needs there are and how this funding could potentially be targeted and utilized.
Yeah, I also want to be clear that when Riley did those maps, he specifically called out the north-south. He didn't add the east-west unfunded.
Oh,
Because
okay.
he was noting that we've got lots of stuff coming on east-west, but we don't really have anything coming.
Right,
north-south.
right.
So we can provide that additional information.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
And if I
Julian.
may, I'll just, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, who was it talking online?
I think that was Riley.
Was Riley? Go ahead, Riley.
Sorry, I was just going to, in response to Mayor Shine's comment, I did include a slide here showing all of the bus corridors in our unfunded strategic project list. The next slide shows the 5 north-south connections, just as a way of, I think, focusing the discussion on, where we as staff have identified these as potentially higher priority given the need for north-south connections by 2028. But all of these corridors shown here, there are east-west corridors as well in our unfunded list. And I would just add, I think another question that we've certainly heard and wanted to consider is, we've identified all of these corridors. Where should we start? And as the public commenter noted, as I know, we've had some efforts around, starting bus lanes on La Brea Avenue, for example, and I know Culver City is starting to look to study bus lanes on Sepulveda Boulevard. But I think the question is, as a sub-region, where do we want to really focus our efforts? Because we can't build all of these corridors in 5 years, but we could potentially, start thinking about these 5 north-south connections and potentially pick one to start with and to actually spend that SEP funding on. I don't know if you would agree with that, Cecilia and Winnie, or if there's anything else you'd add to that. But I think the question is really, where do we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Julian had a question.
And then you also, Jesse.
Yeah.
Infrastructure.
Yes. Yes.
So do we have a commitment? Do we have a spend dead better? So this is infrastructure money. As part of any plan to build stuff, we should have some plan to implement it and what that's going to cost and where it's going to come from and what the long-term commitment to maintaining that is. It's not going to do us any good to build bus shelters and have no buses or anybody to drive them. So I would just, I guess it's a cautionary tale that we consider both sides of the equation. This is only one-time money and it's only infrastructure money. Somewhere with our planning, there should be a commitment to operate whatever it is we build from somebody.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a super important point. The operation and maintenance is always the question when it comes to transit.
And I just a comment there. I think with the buses, then when we look at the west side, it's Metro, it's blue buses in Santa Monica, and it's green buses in Culver City. That's really the 3 agencies that service the area. And if they don't have intentions to run buses on those, then yeah.
That is, yes.
That's great.
I think we have to ask that question first and secure a commitment from them that they will. Or if they won't, find somebody who could and understand what the costs there are.
Jesse, and then Seppi.
Sorry, a clarifying question, I guess. Many of these routes already have buses running on them, right? We're talking about dedicated infrastructure for BRT, not bus shelters or something like that. Is that correct? BRT is a great idea. It's used in many cities to great effect, Bogota especially. Our city is a city of buses. We need bus lanes that will go faster than car traffic if we want people to actually start using them. In addition to the north-south avenues that were identified, there is a small section of Wilshire Boulevard that I think is also pretty crucial in terms of where the 2028 line will end and the connection there into Santa Monica, because right now there's a no man's land. Santa Monica runs buses obviously on Wilshire and on Lincoln, and we do have priority during certain hours for the buses, but if it stops when it gets outside of the city, it's somewhat useless. And especially if we anticipate the D line making it to the VA by 2028, it would be really helpful to have a BRT connection that would make it to Santa Monica.
Thank you. I'm interested in getting some analysis again for La Cienega and La Brea. BRT line with La Cienega crosses a lot of places. I'm feeling La Cienega would be fantastic since a lot of people get in their cars to take La Cienega from the airport as well. And it takes a long time. And I'm thinking this is going to be utilized by people who are likely people of color, people that are working more than one job and then need to get to their jobs faster. And so for me, I would say I would want La Cienega as a priority and then La Brea, but I think we need more information.
Thank you. So thank you so much for the guidance. As Riley noted in his presentation, the next step is for the Transportation Working Group to dig into this, and your direction and your questions are very helpful in moving this forward. Again, 2028 is the magic number because, as you know, the West Side is a venue. It's also where the Olympic Village is going to be. So we have a particular leverage point in arguing that some of these ideas might make a lot of sense for Metro to accelerate them. If the West Side dedicates some of its funding to accelerate it, might make a lot of sense so that the connections are smooth for this signature world-class event. Well, I think we're done with that item, right? I know we're running a little bit behind. So that's it for transportation.
Well, that brings us over to homeless, and we are now, yeah, we are behind. So it's item number 7, homeless, and that's Winnie.
Yes, thank you. The County Homelessness Initiative, they recently notified us that they will be announcing the funding allocation for the local solutions funds for the next fiscal year, sometime in January. This allocation is based on a 2-year average of the point in time count, and they're also going to add a 10% stop loss reduction. So this fiscal year, we received $1.4 million, which means with that policy, we can anticipate a similar amount, and we are subject to no more than 10% reduction in our share of funding. So in terms of timeline and next steps, the county is anticipating us to submit our statement of work for that funding sometime in March, so that they can review and prepare the contract and execute it by June. So we can have funding as early as July 1st of next year. So we will be working with the Housing Working Group to identify potential programs or even regional projects. We will also be reaching out and convene the city managers of our cities to identify potential regional projects. And then we hope to come back in February with a recommendation. Any questions?
Seeing no questions, or yeah, Julian.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Whoa. In our previous conversation about the allocation of those dollars, we made a commitment as a COG to take a look at what we could do regionally. And we really haven't done a lot of work on that. At this level, it might be something, the clock is ticking, so it might be something to put on a future agenda. So if you are working at it, we can see what it is and perhaps would be prepared to make a different decision when it comes up for the allocation next year.
Happens. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
I think the other ones we can skip.
We can
Yeah.
skip the blue
We'll
ribbon.
we'll skip the rest of it.
Okay, everyone knows that we have a new representative there, right?
Yes.
Councilmember Page from Redondo Beach. LA County Relief Program. Winnie.
So this is just to inform you that the county is releasing grant applications for a rent relief program specifically for landlords. And there's a tight deadline because applications are due January 12th. So please share that. This will provide $30,000 per rental unit for landlords to cover past due rent or expenses. And this will help prevent tenant evictions. So.
You have did they send out a notice for that? Do you have that notice?
It's in the agenda packet. Yep. And it'll cover the eligibility and whatnot. And then the homeless count is happening next month. And that's it under homelessness.
The media release is page 82 of the agenda packet. Right in the back is 82. Correct. That's where it starts.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Any questions there? One thing I want to point out with regard to homeless count is that LASA has come out and said that we are not allowed to move any homeless people 30 days before the count starts, and that actually is December 21st or something, right? Which is sort of an odd thing. So if your office actually are doing that, I guess you need to keep count on who you actually get off the street and into shelters after December, I think it's 21st, whatever it is, 30 days before the count. We had a discussion in our city about that. It was sort of a little odd now when it really gets cold and rainy and so on. And yep. That was regarding the homeless count. Legislation, Jeff couldn't make it here today, but his report is included. So read that and enjoy. That means we are over to item number 9, announcement. Anyone has any announcement?
I have a quick one, just to follow up to Dr. Gold on the broadband. If you turn to page 41 on how much federal funding is available, it's in there. So there's going to be 42 billion nationwide available for the broadband equity access to expand high-speed rail and future planning, and then $2.75 billion nationwide for the digital equity.
No, digital
Broadband.
equity. Broadband. Broadband.
Oh, sorry, the broadband. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Sevi?
Yes, thank you. It's not an announcement, but I want to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and wonderful holiday season.
Thank you. Item 10, future meeting, which is in February. Any agenda items? Anyone wants to bring something to the agenda next time?
It'll be my birthday on the 19th, just FYI, everyone. But
We can practice. Happy birthday.
Yeah, where are we going to be? Is that in Beverly Hills or in Culver City?
Beverly Hills. I hear they do a good party. here.
Yeah, I know Beverly Hills actually can bring cake when you have your birthday on that meeting. Because
All right,
that happened
I
last
said that
year.
last
Yeah.
year was the same thing.
Cindy and Gabby, put that on the list. What's your favorite cake?
Red velvet.
Red velvet cake. All right. Particular vendor?
No, Beverly Hills, you.
All right. We need a red velvet cake, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
On the agenda for next week, next meeting, very exciting. We are going to have a discussion about COG dues, so get ready. So we want to give you plenty of time to deliberate and reintroduce. Just for you, Dr. Gold. No, so just want to flag that for you because we want to give you ample time to consider potential increases in dues. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Comments.
Do we have any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, everyone, and really happy Hanukkah and Christmas and everything else that you might celebrate. And see you all in February in Beverly Hills. Thank you.
Stay well.
Happy
Stay
New
safe.
Year, yes, Matthew. That one too, 2020.